We're creating about as many jobs as those other metros combined.
So Bend hates to be compared to Boulder.
We could have a whole hour conversation about this. I think it sets us up another kind of foundation.
Participating. I think that's the difference between being a citizen or sitting on the sidelines.
These conversations are brought to you by the Lad Group, Bend's leading real estate team. Help continue this BendBeat conversation by subscribing, sharing, and leaving us a review. So today we're joined by Bobby Grover. He's the owner of the cultural cornerstone, the caffeine hub of Bend, Thump Coffee. And the reason I asked you to sit down today is that there's always been something very unique and different about Thump. It hits differently. It's involved in our community, and it exudes Bend. And I thought, I would like to dig a little deeper and kind of find out about that. But before we get started, I'd love to hear kind of your origin story, how you got to Bend, and what Bobby is all about.
Ooh. You really want me to start from the beginning?
Or I know you've been here a long time. You guys you were talking with Brian Niles, who's the videographer behind this, and you were talking about 20 years ago, Bellataza days, whatnot. Just kind of like when you came to Bend, what's your origin story here?
My origin story, I grew up in Southern Oregon. My dad was a logger, and so I grew up, working some pretty rough jobs, man. Yeah. And seeing a lot, and I grew up there. When I was 22, I had an accident and decided to leave that and go put myself through school, and got done with school, got recruited by financial companies, and anyway, did that for like 3 years, and opportunity to move over here.
And what was that? When did you move to Bend?
In 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 25 plus years now.
Yeah. So I've never lived outside of Oregon for sure. But 9 months in Denver when we built that one out. But worked there for a few years, and my buddy had started a company called Dutch Brothers Coffee. Yeah. And we were just in communication. I left the financial world, go help them out, and ended up building a few of them out here, and I sold that in 2006, and started a coffee roasting company called 11 Roasters Coffee.
Sure. I didn't know that was yours. Okay.
Yeah. And then, and at that same time, Thump, a guy named Kent Chappell started Thump, great guy. And kind of after my non-compete was up, Kent and I were talking, and I decided to take over Thump, and I had a roastery, and that's how we stared.
Yeah. So why coffee? So from logging to finance to coffee, what brought you to coffee?
To be honest, I don't know if I have ever set a goal in my life. I just knew how to work and knew how to give everything 100%. And so the opportunity that was before me, I just did the best I could, and tried to be the best, and that you run into a lot of roadblocks and obstacles, and I didn't know anything else, so I just kept going. That's the truth. I didn't know I was going to be a coffee guy. That's
where the path led.
Yeah.
Well, and before we get into coffee and what makes Thump so interesting, we were just talking about it. You were chasing steelhead and chinook down the lower salmon, or in the lower Deschutes, and some of your baseball caps have a beautiful spay fly on there. Yeah. Tell me, so obviously you're a fisherman.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because I think I've heard stories from several other people about you fishing all around the world, but so that's your thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you disconnect.
Yeah, why fishing, and why spay fishing in particular?
There's just so much to it. I mean, I don't know, it's something that you can never really master, and I like when it's nice out, not even nice, it could be, 50 degrees is nice. So I practice almost every night.
I think I've seen you down near the Whitewater Park throwing a line before.
You might have. I've been down there, but I cast a lot on these private ponds that
Yeah.
allow me to do that, and super grateful for it. But it's just something that takes a lot of technique and patience and time. And I mean, if you want to be good at anything, you got to put the work in, you know. And it's something that I love to do. It disconnects me from like my phone, from everything else. So and I give it 100%. Well, just like coffee, you know, it's like you get in there and it's just you give it 100%.
So it's your moving meditation. And, you know, for those who aren't familiar with spay fishing, there's fishing, then there's fly fishing, which is harder, and then there's spay casting, which is an absolutely masochistic endeavor where it just can absolutely fall apart, and usually involves about a 13-foot rod. It's a two-handed operation, and you're probably fishing the complicated Scandi lines, I'm sure.
Yeah, actually the long belly lines, which are like 74 feet, but and 15-foot rods. So it's just one of those things where, like, you know, it's just practice.
Yeah. So I mean, it's also punishing for those that are casually approaching spay fishing. It can absolutely be punishing unless you're dedicated to it. You know, I would think like golf or something. You know, it's perfecting the golf swing. But when you're trying to throw out 100 feet of line with a 13-foot rod, and to try not to spook the fish that you get one shot at, it's a really intricate endeavor. So
Can be.
yeah. So you don't pick easy things. So, you know, let's get to Thump. There's an aura about Thump, from your branding to your locations to your people to your incredible coffee. You know, we could kind of pick at each subject, but, you know, if I were to ask the general question, what makes Thump so special? You know, what makes Thump Thump? You know, where would you start with that?
Yeah. Well, I'd start with like our mission. I mean, Thump exists to transform the lives of people through the power of its craft.
Transform people through the power of its craft.
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to say coffee, but craft meaning we do baking, we roast coffee. Everything we do, we want to think about the end result, and that is to make people's lives better. Be like my dad said, love, and always be worth more than you're being paid. And you know, and that takes finding people that wake up every day and they're thankful and they believe they can change the world. They can make the world a better place.
It's a pretty heavy mission for a
Yeah,
coffee shop.
Yeah, but it starts every day with every interaction, right? I mean, it's small.
Absolutely.
It's small. I mean, how hard is it to smile at somebody when they walk through the door?
But it's not commonplace anymore. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, somebody asked me like, what are your core values? You know, customer service or quality or speed or what? I'm like, all of it.
But it takes a lot of energy to show up, and not only to show up for yourself, but to carry the torch, you know, to create that North Star for your organization and everyone in there. That's a big load. You know, why fight that fight? Why is it so meaningful for you to have a mission-driven organization that betters people's lives in Bend?
I don't know, just making a difference pays me way more than like any money could. I think if you are that for people, then I mean, money will come.
Yep.
You know, if you're different that way, and it's about finding those people, right? The people that really want to change the world, that really believe they can, serving a cup of coffee or making a croissant. Yeah, I mean, they're rare people to find, but when you do, you hang on to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a brief conversation previously, and you were talking about kind of carrying the load, everyone's shoulders, you know, picking up the rafter or carrying their piece. You know, you don't want to kind of relay that.
It's one of our archetypes. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
The warrior?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we approach it from a team aspect like that, and we think of, Navy SEALs and BUDS, for instance, and they're carrying this raft filled with water down the beach, racing the other boat teams, and we think of the weight that if one member of the team lets down, the weight doesn't go away. It's lighter for that one guy, but it puts all that weight on the rest of the team. But if you have a team that are all lifting more, it takes weight off. right?
Yeah.
And so, you want to look for those people that are very team oriented, that care more about, the mission than they do their own. They want to. That's what they strive to be, right? Is that team player. So you don't, show up to work and go, oh, I have to work with Bobby today. You don't want that, right? You want to go, oh, I get to work with Bobby today. Yeah, he's going to kick ass, So it makes showing up every day awesome.
For what it's worth, it's very tangible, and it's appreciated, and there's an attraction to your place, your food, your services, your people, and it's palpable. And I think hopefully this will add some insight that things like that don't happen by accident.
That's good. Yeah, you wake up every day and you try to, find the things that you're thankful for. I mean, whatever you look for, you're going to find, right? And if you find what you have and what you are, and you're thankful for that, I mean, then you're not looking at what you don't have and what you're not. And so I think as a company, we're thankful. We're thankful for every customer that walks in. We're thankful that we have a job and a place. I mean, I never thought I'd be where I'm at. It's awesome being part of a community, that you could be there for people, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. I think Thump is kind of a physical manifestation of kind of who you are and the belief system that you carry. And it's interesting to see that on display. So that's a very big overarching, mission statement and amazing. But like to kind of just get a little bit more granular, did you always envision having such a mission-driven business and become the leader that you are, or did it just kind of develop organically over time? Because I'm sure when you went from finance to coffee roasting, you didn't envision that you were going to try to be a cultural driver of a city through serving coffee and pastries. But was that just something that kind of blossomed over time, or did you always have a mission ahead where, that's saying, I'm going to carry that role?
No, I think it, as all humans, we like what feels good. And for me, it started, I think, with leading kids in coaching and youth programs and things like that. Like when you can make a difference in people's lives, that feels good more than anything else can pay you. Having the opportunity to do that with everybody that walks through the door, I mean, it is great. I mean,
is it a mission for you to kind of help direct the lives and support the trajectories of your employees as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Like we make all kinds of mistakes, and have all kinds of failures. But everybody that's there and has left and have come back, and I wish everyone well that's ever been there. And if somebody wants to go better their life somewhere else, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how can I support you?
Brian Ladd here. I hope you're enjoying the conversation and find this dialogue relevant to really what it means to live and work and play in this amazing community. As Ben's leading real estate team, we take our role seriously in representing both buyers and sellers at the absolute highest standards of our industry. For more information on how we can help, feel free to visit our website at benpropertysource.com or text LADD1, LADD1 to 88,000.
Let's talk about a little bit more of the craft itself, because the craft itself, we could talk about, a lot of people could have a mission, but if their core craft and product is bad, they won't be able to push out that into the marketplace. And at the core of what you do is incredibly good coffee. Where did that come from?
Trial and error.
Trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, I've stayed the night in my roastery several times. I mean, we all learn by our mistakes, I thought it was my roast, imagine being new at something and I bought this coffee that was supposed to be great and I roasted it over. I went through the whole thing trying to perfect it, but little did I know, like, coffee is an agricultural product and it'll turn just like a banana.
And you just couldn't make it great.
Right, but I didn't know that. I thought it was like, this is coffee, I'm roasting it, now it should be great. But the coffee had turned, it was probably past crop, and I mean, you don't realize that it's fruit, you know, that it starts,
Yeah.
you know, it has a life cycle. So, I mean, we don't think about things like that. And there's different growing seasons, there's different, you know, every region has its own season and harvest time. And I mean, you can't get strawberries all year long,
Yeah.
you know, good ones anyway.
But to try to be an expert, not to try to be an expert all the way from understanding the cycles of the fruit in different regions to delivering a cup of coffee in Bend with a mission-driven organization, that's a big, broad scope for a small organization. That's carrying a big load. I would assume that most people pick a very narrow section of that responsibility. And you're going from, and are you going all the way down to picking your fields of where you're buying the coffee from?
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, for sure. We've created some great contacts in regions, and we get our hands on some really, really cool coffees. Yeah, so I have people that look and they'll call and they know what we're looking for, and they'll send us samples, and you know, and we'll try them out, and if they're great, we bring them in.
I'm sure there's going to be some coffee connoisseur listening to this saying you're not asking any of the right questions, but I'll try. Like, truly,
You actually are.
Okay, truly, what makes a great cup of coffee if you had to distill it down?
The experience you have when you're drinking it.
Okay.
So if we're talking about quality, that's I mean, you know, what's your favorite restaurant in town, right?
Yeah.
Like, answers are going to be different. It's whatever you like.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we're going by like pure quality, like a Q grader would grade a coffee like you would a wine.
Yeah.
You know, there's money. I mean, like those coffees are very expensive.
Yep.
But you know, I think more than that experience, it's like, where are you? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? What are you looking at? You know, I mean, those things. You know, are you sitting on your bumper just getting ready to climb in a river, and it's still dark out and there's fog off the river? You just brewed a cup on your tailgate. That's awesome. I mean, it's very subjective.
Yeah, that brings a picture to mind. Yeah, yesterday I escaped from work and ran up in my van and got some powder turns in at the end of the day, right as it was getting dark, and I was brewing a cup of coffee in my van with your new instant crystals.
Oh yeah.
And it hit the spot.
Oh, the instant's insane.
So how are you pulling that off? Because isn't that a pretty small niche to pursue?
Very. We have our own brewing process that we built the brewer for it ourselves.
So tell me so to give background on this
tell you.
is kind of you can't tell us all that, but this is an instant coffee that you guys are now selling. Tell us a little bit about that, and kind of the goal of why you are selling that alongside your traditional coffee.
One, we've created the process of brewing it, and then freeze drying that in time. So we've perfected this brew.
Yeah.
And so we encapsulate all the flavor and aroma.
Yeah.
And then freeze dry that in time. So, and then it lasts forever. So those little bottles have 14 servings in them. It's super concentrated.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's hard to beat even with a pour over. I mean, we're trying to think of a different name because I don't think instant coffee does it justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is fully legit. I was
Yeah.
I was on a climbing trip this summer, and I gave it to a few of the people, and they went nuts over it. And they're like, "Where can I find this?" I'm like, "I don't think you can find this."
Totally.
So to speak of that, like you were talking about your buddy who started Dutch Brothers, who, for those that aren't aware, they went public. The founder, what's his name?
Travis.
Travis was on the New York Stock Exchange with the Rage Against the Machine shirt on, hitting the bell to open the
Sounds
stock
like him.
exchange with a multiple billion-dollar valuation, and the stock market is trying to use them as the opposite of Starbucks and whatnot, and a huge expansion model with multiple billion-dollar valuation.
He was a dairy farmer.
He's a
before
dairy
that.
farmer. He was a Medford guy, right? Or
Grants Pass.
Grants Pass. And you're from?
Grants Pass.
Grants Pass. Okay. So obviously that's a very business growth trying to get as many coffee cups out into the world model. What's your vision for Thump Coffee going forward?
Well, back to what we talked about before, it's about experience.
Yeah.
So it's about the people there. As long as they want to grow, like, we'll grow.
So it's like your career path. You walk the path with those around you, and you end up in a new place.
I have no plan, right?
Yeah. Okay.
We just do what we do. I mean, like I said, the goal isn't become the biggest. It's to be really good at what we're doing right now, and that's creating an experience, right?
Yeah.
And if we get to that point to where we get those people that want to go start their own or want to go expand, then we'll do that. Yeah, but you can't recreate it. You can't force it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't force growth in doing what we do, because that's not very genuine, right? It becomes manufactured. So it's about the people. It really is. And so when they get that experience where they want to go run their own, let's do it. I'm all for it.
I love that answer, because so many businesses are built predicated on the growth is the plan. And to have such a mission-driven statement, I think it creates a very robust, very strong business that, you know, that'll go in interesting, fun, new directions into the future. But to pull back from that a little bit, I know that you're very involved, and you alluded to it earlier with kids sports, things like that.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that, you know, you support personally and through your organization here in Bend?
Oh, man. Well, right now we have a Thump lacrosse.
Okay.
And that started, my son played lacrosse, and we started off in Parks and Rec and went up through, and then got to the point where they didn't really have a club team option. So we slapped Thump on some jerseys and made a club team. And it was just, you know, it started with his team, and then it just grew, you know, and there were like over 300 families as part of it.
Just here in Bend.
Yeah. And like, you know, we didn't charge very much. It was
Yeah.
a for-profit, nonprofit.
Yeah.
Actually, but it was just a way of giving back, you know, just creating opportunity for these kids that they didn't have before. And I just think, you know, youth sport's an equalizer, you know. It teaches kids, like, back to spay fishing and anything you do in life. If you want to be really good at something, you got to put in the work. You can't just fake it, you know.
Yeah.
You have to be it, you know. Talking doesn't help.
Well, you are that, and you've shown up for our city. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people that take it for granted that we have so many amazing resources in our community, from healthcare to transportation to youth sports. But there's usually somebody behind each one of those, or a lot of people behind each one of those that created their own passion project. And I guess if I were to, you know, if I were to pair you up with someone that's new to Bend, you know, and if you were to try to explain to them what makes Bend special, you know, and what's their role as a new resident here, you know, what would be the conversation that you have with that person?
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind when you're speaking is our second archetype, and that's a citizen. And it's like, you could either be a good citizen or a bad citizen. I think a good citizen makes a community better.
Yeah.
It's better for it being part of it, right? Bad citizen just feeds off that community, right? They don't bring anything to the table. So whenever you enter a new community, it's like, how can I make this better? You know, and it could be just being kind, you know, and thankful. That's going to make it better. Having more people like that, that's awesome. But, yeah.
Yeah, because growth can mean a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of things.
And does mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of what you do with it. You know, me being in the real estate business, I'm on the front lines of a lot of new people coming into our community. And there's a lot of great people that bring a lot of stoke and a lot of energy and a lot of kind of, you know, mental resources and financial resources into the community, which is awesome. But then there's a lot of people that come in and just expect, kind of the ocean to part for them and serve them, and they're very critical of all of our services. And I'm always trying to figure out what the wake up call for them is, saying, hey, the doors are absolutely open. We want to be an inclusive, we want to grow and change. But I'm always trying to look for that moment to like awaken them that Bend didn't happen by accident.
No.
Behind the good energy that we have here and all this amazing, diverse, cool stuff happening, there's somebody that finally raised their hand and said, I'll shoulder that load. I'm going to drive this forward.
Yeah. Bend's not your playground.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And I meet a lot of different personality types, and it was one of the reasons, or was the reason, I created that Bend 101, which we've discussed before, that tries to provide a little history on what Bend is and all the people that have tried to make it what it is today, because I've found that kind of education will disarm myopic or narrow perceptions on what Bend is and what growth is and what change is. And I've often found that people, whether it's they moved here as a retired person and Bend is perfect, Bend's nirvana, and not one more house should go up, not one more tree should go down, or whether it's a young family that is trying to buy their first house or start a business, or whether it's somebody that is serving our community, working the 911 call center that can't afford to live here and they live an hour away and they're driving on 2-lane icy roads to come into service daily. And so what I've found is that inherently people are good. They just don't have the breadth of experience of understanding that, on the fringes of town, we have people sleeping in their old RVs behind juniper trees. And that, and so kind of the challenges that we have here hit on all fronts, and it's not easy. And trust me, I'm as equally as grumpy as anyone when I pull up to my favorite secret spot and there's a dozen cars at the trailhead, or when, we have trash on our streets and things like that. But I think it's conversation and education. And my real fear was, now that we're a 100,000 person city, that we lose that responsibility for engagement where people feel it's too big to affect.
Well, I think kindness and gratitude cures a lot of that, right? I mean, if you're surrounded by those people, right, that are thankful for what we have, not what we don't, not the bad service. I mean, look, we make mistakes all the time, right? But I think kindness and gratitude and graciousness, all those things make up for that. People will forgive a mistake. So, I mean, if you're surrounded by people that are trying to find good in you, then I mean, that makes up for the packed trailheads and the fishing spots, because people are like, here, step in the water. Let me get out for you. You know what I mean? It's like you're actually stoked they're here, because, obviously they came here for a reason, probably because they wanted a better life or they wanted something better, right? And it was like, okay, well, now be better. Make a difference. Make your community better. Don't make us feed you. You feed it. You know what I mean?
I do, and I'm sorry, I'm just kind of lost in reflecting on all the things that you said. I think you have a lot of, a deep, authentic, and very clear-eyed vision on what makes Bend. And I just pray and hope that people will hear that. And there's a lot of amazing people in our community.
100%.
And every time I get burnt out on all the challenges that we have here in Bend, anytime I go travel, every time I come back to Bend, whether it's getting off a plane in Redmond or cresting the pass or coming in through the plains of Eastern Oregon, when I get home, it's and go grab a cup of coffee. It definitely is home. So I appreciate you being such an important part of it, and what you've said today has really helped me understand of kind of, I've always scratched my head and I'm like, why is it so different over there? So I'm gonna try to be a little bit more gracious when I find that perfect steelhead swing on the lower Deschutes and someone's about to low hole me. I'll swallow hard, go down there and offer them advice on what fly they should use. So Bobby, I think that you have delivered a lot of culture. You know, you've described the cultural fabric of Bend, and I appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to get out there? Or?
I don't love to talk. I want people to experience it for themselves, right? Like I don't want to talk about it. I want to prove it, right? Just do it, be it, yeah.
Yeah, talk's cheap.
Talk's cheap, man.
With that, let's put a bow on it.
As I'm on a podcast.
Talk's cheap. Let's end the podcast and go live our mission. So
Yeah, man.
I appreciate your time today.
You got it.
Take care.